Ah, that was good. Straight onto the outro screen instead of this one. Right, okay. Ignore that, you didn't see anything. Good evening, everyone. This is Reading for Charity again. This time around we're going to be doing the Drawing of the Three, which is the second book in the Dark Tower trilogy. 6-7 books, however long it is. First of all, my usual spiel. I'm doing this all for charity. This is just one big charity read. 100 books in a year, which amounts to effectively 2 a week, which is why I'm doing the reviews every Wednesday and Sunday. And some of these books are getting quite thick to get done in 3 or 4 days, and they're only going to get worse. I think the last couple of books in this particular series are really quite thick. So getting them done in 3 or 4 days is going to be a struggle, because God knows I've fallen behind on it so far. The next one I'm going to get really struggling to get done in time, I think. But anyway, my usual spiel at the start. My usual spiel at the start is we are doing reading this time round for the Archie Foundation. It's a fantastic charity. It works in the northeast of Scotland for sick kids. If you've ever been in hospital as an adult, you know how terrifying it can be, especially if you're going into theatre. It's cold, it's stainless steel, it's scary. There's people around in masks. It's not a fun experience going in as an adult. Imagine what it's like going in as a child. It must be absolute nightmarish. I've never been in myself. I've never had to take my own child there. Thank goodness, touch wood, that continues. But I know that if she went in, I'd want someone to make her life as easy as possible, and that's what the Archie Foundation does. If you've donated them before, if you donated to this already, thank you very much. Please donate again. It's a fantastic thing to donate to, and the more donations, the more they can do. If you've never donated them or never donated to this, what's been stopping you? There'll be a link in the description to this video. Click the link and throw a couple of pounds. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It doesn't have to be £10 or £15 or even a £5. Just click on the link and throw £2, and it makes a big difference. Everything makes a big difference. It's a great charity, and I'm happy to raise money for them. On to the book. The Drawing of the Three. It's hard to hold this up without covering the title. The Drawing of the Three. Interesting book, given its 400 and something odd pages. 460 pages? 463 pages. Following directly on from The Gunslinger. So when The Gunslinger ends and Roland is basically left at the side of the sea, having dealt with the Man in Black, being half starving to death, he then loops straight into the Drawing of the Three, and he starts off with quite a bold move, I think, for someone called the Gunslinger, which is to remove 50% of his guns from it instantly. And I'm not going to say how that happens. I'm trying to keep these as spoiler free as possible, but it's a bold move, and through the book he gets bolder. In terms of when he picks up Susanna or Detta or Odella, depending which one you want to call her, and Eddie, he basically the way I've been thinking about it is he's replaced his hands with them, and I think that's maybe a little bit, having read on a wee bit further in the Drawing of the Three, I think that's maybe how Stephen King's intending it to be as well. That his one of his hands is completely useless, and he has replaced them. Which is why he's fine with handing away his guns to Susanna and Eddie. But that's kind of further near the end of this book and start of the next one. This one just rolls straight on from where the Gunslinger left, straight into action and straight into what's going on. Again, in this book, Stephen King has written the environmental hazards fantastically well. He's written Roland's fevers, Roland's when he's suffering from a life-threatening infection for which there's no medicine in Roland's world. He writes that all fantastically well, really fantastically well. I think it's the best stuff he writes in this book is when he talks about the environmental stuff and the way that people feel in the environment, especially Eddie, when Eddie's in the midst of his drug binges. Stephen King writes it very well, and writes the flip side of it when Roland is suffering from the infection as very well as well. There's only so much I can say without doing some spoilers, so there's going to be a few spoilers in this. When Roland, so be warned, 5 seconds. Okay, when Roland enters Eddie's head, and doesn't take over initially, but is just looking around and acting a little bit odd on the plane. I was thinking this was going to be kind of a straightforward fish out of water style book where Roland rides around in Eddie's head for the majority of the book, and hilariously comes forward every so often, gets things wrong, says the wrong word, uses popkin rather than sandwich, or doesn't know how the guns work in the real world. Things like that. I thought that's how the book was gonna go. And initially, that's I think the route Stephen King went down as well. And then again, Stephen King being the way he writes, which is he almost writes stream of consciousness. He'll write a piece and he'll just keep writing. He doesn't go back and edit much until he's actually finished his book, and he very rarely rewrites. The book swerves kind of backwards and forwards between, especially in Eddie's chunk, between the fish out of water stuff, and then when Stephen King obviously gets bored of that quite quickly and decides that he's just going to pull Roland through into New York itself, and then we get full-blown fish out of water, but not for very long because events start becoming apace at that point. And the shootout in the Leaning Tower is fantastic. It's really, really well done. Excuse me. It's really fantastically well done. Especially when they talk about Eddie, who's never really fired a gun before, and the way he deals with the situation about being thrown a gun, involved in a fight out, and as Roland says, he thinks Eddie could have what it takes to be a gunslinger because his first firefight is naked and it's hard to fight naked. I'm not sure if that's true, never having to fight naked, but I'll take Stephen King and Roland's word for it. Excuse me. Okay. So I think that bit is again the kind of sign that Stephen King just changes his mind about how he's going to write a book as he's writing it. And you can see that again later on in the book when they deal with the third of the three, which is Jack Mort. And Stephen King seems to like the idea of drawing books to a close, even though it's part of the long-running series. So rather than having any unanswered questions about Odetta and the loss of her legs, etc., he rounds the book off very swiftly with what happens with Jack Mort. And it's slightly unsatisfying. You kind of get 2/3 of the way through the book, and 2 of the 3 have been drawn, and one is sound and whole, one is a complete and total psychopath, and you're wondering what's going to happen with the third and how he's going to round it all off. And I think there's a little bit of Stephen King, I think, wonders how he's going to round it off as well by the time he gets to Jack Mort, because the ending feels like he's wrapping up loose ends rather than actually writing to a plan. Very much so. The way he makes Jack Mort responsible kind of for everything up to that point, rather than the Man in Black. It's kind of giving Roland the closure in this book that he didn't have in the last book. So when Roland saves Jake from Jack Mort right at the start right at the start of the third part when he jumps into Jack Mort's body, that's kind of like the bit that you didn't get at the end of The Gunslinger, where he didn't get the redemption for himself by killing the Man in Black and didn't seem to worry about it. He still doesn't worry about it through this book, which is I again find annoying. He should, having spent so long hunting down the Man in Black, he doesn't seem to care about it anymore. That annoys me. But so we're talking about Jack Mort. When he jumps in Jack Mort's body and he stops the death of Jake, and then kills Jack Mort in a way that he kind of forces Odetta's hand. It feels like it's very Machina X Deus, and it's very much rounding up loose ends. And like Stephen King likes, making sure at the end of every book, if he gets hit by, I suppose it's if he gets hit by a truck thing, isn't he? Which he kind of did. he had the major car accident. I think he likes the idea of if he never writes another book, you know, the end of each book could be the end of the series, technically, with no loose ends. Not necessarily a satisfactory outcome, but no loose ends. And again, this one has no loose ends. By the end of the book, you are definitely at a no loose end area, and I think that's okay. That is okay. But I think if he's planning on writing it as as a series, as one continuous book, which he says in the foreword, it's the same foreword in this book as it is in Gunslinger. If he's planning on writing it as a continuous series, then you know, don't have each book neatly tying itself up. You know, you're allowed to leave loose ends because you can start identifying those in the next book. And yeah, I'm partway through the Wastelands, which is the third book, and it's kind of going the same way. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. Should you read this book? Yes, you should. If you've read The Gunslinger and you're planning on reading The Dark Tower, then it's kind of necessary that you need to read this book. I think it's going to be the same answer through most of them, because even if there's a bad book in the series, it's probably going to be the case that you have to read the bad book to know what's going on, to read the good books. So yeah, I've been told the first 3 books in the series are the best, and it kind of meanders a little bit through book 4, book 5 before picking up near the end again. This was a good book. It was, you could kind of feel in the last, I want to say the last third, but it's not really the last third, it's kind of the last 15% that he was getting leaned on to finish, because the Jack Mort bit feels rushed. It feels like he's rushing to tie up all the loose ends that is needed for him to finish the book. You know, the medicine for Roland, some way to cure Odetta of her fractured mind, some way to save Eddie from Odetta, some way to tie up, you know, Odetta's past, so there's no Odetta's past loose ends when they move on. The only loose ends are Roland's past. All those things, he feels like the last bit, the Jack Mort bit, is rushed at the end, and it suffers a little bit from that because it feels rushed. I think I've had rushed endings before, which felt a bit more leisurely when people have been tying up loose ends, and I've had some bad ones. The worst one being Peter F. Hamilton. What was the name of the book? Pandora's Star. That trilogy. The Pandora's Star trilogy, yeah. Where it's literally a machina ex deus at the end. Literally, God turns up and fixes all the problems in the last 20 pages. Having spent 3,000 pages setting up the problem. To have, you know, literally that many pages at the end of the book, a God turns up and fixes everything. And that was frustrating. And I have a sneaky suspicion that occasionally Stephen King's going to fall into the same boat, because he wants all his books to be neatly tied up in a bow by the time he finishes them. We'll see if that continues through the rest of the series, but at the moment, yeah, that's the way it's going. So yeah, read this book. It's a great book. I actually am really enjoying Stephen King's writing style. I've never read much in the way of Stephen King before. If any, really. I think I've read, It. I think I read It, and one other book when I was younger, but I didn't enjoy them that much. I don't really enjoy horror books particularly well. But I really enjoy his writing style on this. He's very much moved away from everything he set up in The Gunslinger. This is far more, it's verging on conventional fantasy, this one. Not so much. He's completely lost the Western feel. There's no Western feel about this book at all. Even the kind of Homer-esque, you know, Grecian epic feel that he had in The Gunslinger has gone as well. This feels far more conventional than The Gunslinger did. And I think, you know, it's 19 years between The Gunslinger and this book, so, you know, people's styles do change over time as an author. So his style's obviously changed. It'll be interesting to see if that style again maintains all the way through the rest of the books, or whether it will morph again in the interests of, you know, Stephen King's writing style. I have a sneaking suspicion. I suspect it'll change, but this is far more conventional fantasy than The Gunslinger, and it's maybe a little bit of a shame, because I quite enjoyed the kind of the Grecian epic mixed with the Western style, the Western film style. I quite liked that mesh. I think it was quite an interesting way of doing it, and it would be nice to keep going that way. I think though Stephen King made the right choice, because it probably would have got boring after a while, because the only way that can work is if the main character remains alone all the way through the book, or is sure that everyone around him is going to die at any point in time, like Jake in the first book. That gives the sense of inevitability and the sense of foreboding and doom and destiny, which he calls Can, this book. And it kind of works in The Gunslinger, and I don't think it would have worked here. I think he was right to kind of move away from that, because it would get boring after a while. It would be the same book over and over again. There's only so many ways that you can write the lone hero moving from town to town and killing everyone he meets. So I think this book is good because it's given him 2 extra characters to deal with. I think there were supposed to be 3, but again, in the rush to tie up all the loose ends, we've only got 2, because Jack Mort needed to die, so he did. And I don't know whether that's Stephen King thinking that he really only wants the 3 of them, as in Roland, Eddie, and Susanna, or whether it's because he just ran out of time and that was the way he had to do it. But it is funny that it's called The Drawing of the 3, and he ends up actually only drawing 2. Drawing as in drawing through the doors, rather than the tarot drawing, which I think was again a neat touch. When he did that in The Gunslinger, I don't think he had any idea about how he was going to handle the prophecy, and the way he did it was actually really good. I actually really enjoyed it. The doors through, it's a typical fantasy staple. Great book I read when I was younger was Moon Dreams, in which the main character could move between the dream realm and the real world through mirrors. Very, very simple, never-ending story. Again, moving through between the 2 different worlds almost at will. That's actually a really good example. The never-ending story and the Drawing of the 3, and more so for the Wastelands. When the 2 worlds are effectively happening simultaneously. Stephen King actually writes it quite well. He writes it very neatly in the way that something's going on in the real world and something's happening in Roland's world at the same time. He handles it quite well. It's quite tough to write. My favourite way that's been handled was the Neverending Story. I have a fantastic edition of the Neverending Story, where the real world and the I can't remember the name of the other world, the Neverending Story. That's terrible. Are actually written in different colours and different fonts from each other. So as you're going through the book, it's interspersed. Because that book flip-flops quite heavily backwards and forwards between the real and between the 2 worlds. And Stephen King has written in such a way that he doesn't need to do that, and it works. But it feels far more like a film script when he does it, rather than Neverending Story, which is very, very much narrative. But that doesn't mean it's bad at all. It's not. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed this one, even if the end did feel rushed, and I think it was rushed. So yes, good book, really enjoyable. Setting up the next stage in the series quite nicely, I think. Again, ribbon tied around all the loose ends. There's no loose ends at the end of this book, other than Roland and his past and the future, which I think is going to be the staple for the book. It is about Roland, but the sidekicks having it all neatly tied up in a bow is acceptable for the way Stephen King does it, I think. Yes, very enjoyable. I don't have The Wasteland sitting beside me. It's sitting next door from where I was reading it earlier. So normally I would wave up The Wastelands going, this is the next book I'm going to be reading, this one here, right here. But imagine Stephen King, The Wasteland, right here. Yes. It looks much like this, except the cover's slightly different. Look at that bit. Look at that bit, yeah. Stephen King, The Wasteland. That will be on Sunday. Assuming I can get it finished in time, which I'm hoping I will. I'm a wee bit behind. I'm looking forward to that one. It's going to be quite a good read. It has been quite a good read so far. I think it possibly might end up being the best one of the trilogy so far. We'll see. We'll get it. We'll wait till I finish it and see what I think. See if it's as rushed at the end of this. I hope not. But that will be on Sunday. Again, finish this off in the usual way. We're reading for the Archie Foundation. It's a fantastic charity. It helps sick kids, mostly in the northeast of Scotland. In particular, you know, it helps making, you know, theatre visits for children a lot easier for them. And anything that helps sick kids is a fantastic thing in my book. If you've never donated before, go ahead, throw us a couple of quid. That's all you need to do. Any donations to them will make a difference. It's a fantastic charity. If you have donated before, if you donated to this even, thank you very much. What's stopping you donating again? Go on, again, a couple of quid, and it's fantastic. Anything that ups the amount of money that I pull in from this will make all the time I've spent on this feel a lot better to me. But yes, I'll put the links to the descriptions in this video. Go ahead, go take a look, throw them some money. Again, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. This is Reading for Charity, and I will speak to you all again on Sunday. Good evening.